You know, finding an affordable place to live seems like it's getting harder and harder for so many of us. I mean, from rents that just keep climbing to home prices that feel totally out of reach, the squeeze is on. But what happens when a state government decides to jump into the ring and, well, change the fundamental rules of the game? That is the exact fight brewing right now in Illinois, and honestly, the outcome could have ripple effects across the whole country.
And this quote from Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, it just gets right to the heart of it. He's not mincing words. He's framing this as a full-blown affordability crisis for families, and the root of the problem, he argues, is pretty simple. The state is just not building enough homes, not even close.
And this isn't just a talking point. The numbers here are pretty staggering. Researchers at the University of Illinois ran the numbers and found the state is short about 142,000 housing units right now. That's a massive, massive deficit, and it's putting a ton of pressure on prices for everyone.
So let's just take a second to dig into the actual scale of this problem. Because, as big as that 142,000 number is, the really scary part is what's coming down the pipeline.
Now, just to keep up with what they expect the demand to be, Illinois needs to build almost 250,000 new homes by 2030. Think about that for a second. This isn't just about patching a leak anymore. It's about trying to get out in front of a flood that's only going to get worse.
Okay, so with a problem that big, what's the solution on the table? Well, Governor Pritzker has rolled out a pretty sweeping plan that's designed to tackle this housing shortage head-on.
It's called the Building Up Illinois Development Plan, or BUILD for short. And the goals are really straightforward. Make it easier, faster, and cheaper to get new homes built. Simple as that. At its core, this is a really ambitious shot at changing the entire economic equation of building a home in the state.
So how exactly is this all supposed to work? Well, it really boils down to two main pillars. First, a pretty dramatic change to local zoning laws, and second, a big injection of state cash. Let's break down that first piece.
For any of this to make sense, we've got to talk about a term you've probably heard before: single-family zoning. For decades, this has been the bedrock of American suburbs. It's basically a local rule that says, on this piece of land, you can build one thing and one thing only: a single detached house. Now, this directly limits how many homes can exist in an area, and, basic economics tells us what happens next. When you choke off supply but demand stays high, prices shoot up.
And this is where the BUILD plan gets really controversial. It's proposing a state law that would basically reach down and override those local single-family zoning rules all across Illinois. The goal is to legalize what a lot of people call missing middle housing, things like duplexes, triplexes, or even small apartment buildings in neighborhoods where right now they're completely banned.
And when you look at the nitty-gritty, you can see how specific this whole proposal is. It's not some free-for-all. The plan actually creates this tiered system based on how big the property is. So on a smaller lot, like you see here, you could build up to 4 units. On a bigger lot, that number jumps to 6 or even 8. It's a very direct, kind of surgical attempt to boost housing density statewide.
But the plan isn't just about tweaking rules for builders. It's also about tackling the other side of this crisis. And that brings us to that second pillar: money. The governor is proposing a massive $250 million investment into an initiative called Home Illinois, which is aimed squarely at fighting homelessness and housing insecurity.
And as you can see from this breakdown, they're really trying to attack the problem from all sides. The money isn't just going to one bucket. The biggest slice, over $81 million, is heading to shelters. But then you also have major funding for supportive housing to get people long-term stability, rental assistance to keep them in their homes in the first place, and rapid rehousing programs. It's a really comprehensive approach.
Okay, so as you can probably imagine, a plan this bold has kicked off a major debate. And it really all comes down to a classic political fight. Who gets to call the shots? The state capitol or your local city hall? On one side, you've got supporters like the Illinois REALTORS, which is the state's biggest real estate group. Their CEO, Jeff Baker, is praising the governor's plan, calling it a common-sense solution that they've been pushing for years. They basically see it as a necessary step to fix a crisis that's affecting the entire state.
But on the other side, there is some fierce opposition. The Illinois Municipal League, which represents local city and town governments, argues that these kinds of decisions are best made by local leaders who actually know their communities. Their CEO, Brad Cole, is warning against what he calls one-size-fits-all statewide mandates.
And this really gets to the core of the whole fight. Supporters say, look, the housing crisis is a regional problem that individual towns can't solve on their own. We need a big statewide solution. But opponents fire back that a top-down order from the state is a blunt instrument that's just going to ignore what makes each community unique. And this idea of local control is powerful. It's this belief that communities should get to protect their own character and property values. But the counter-argument is that that very model is what got us into this crisis in the first place.
To really understand what's happening here, we have to zoom out, because this Illinois fight, it isn't happening in a vacuum. Not at all. It's part of a much bigger national conversation that's been heating up for a while now. I mean, Illinois is far from the only state doing this. Just look at this list. You've got California and Washington who've already passed major zoning reforms. States like Texas and Florida are getting in on the action. Even neighbors like Indiana and Pennsylvania are having this exact same debate. State houses all over the country, both red and blue, are starting to step in and take back some of that authority over housing. It's a real trend.
And that's exactly why what happens here matters so much, even if you don't live in Illinois. The success or failure of this build plan is going to be seen as a huge test case. Other states are watching. They want to see if this kind of ambitious plan can actually get done. The outcome here could become a blueprint, or maybe a cautionary tale, for the rest of the country.
So, it all circles back to this one central question. Who gets to decide what gets built in a neighborhood? The local leaders who live there, or the state government that's trying to solve a crisis that affects everyone? There is no easy answer here, and the way Illinois finally lands on this could set the stage for communities everywhere.